Hi, Epic Recaps here, and today I'm going to explain to you a 2005 American action thriller film titled Into the Blue. If you want to be spoiled, keep watching. The movie opens on a Bahamian coastline where a young couple is living a rustic life in a trailer, on a beach in the Bahamas. Sam works as a guide in the local aquatic theme park, Atlantis, and Jared has worked a number of odd jobs in his field of passion, which is diving. His real dream, though, is finding one of many pirate ships lost in the waters, many of them with large amounts of gold on board. One day, Jared's friend Bryce, a lawyer from New York City, and Amanda, his girlfriend, arrive for a visit. Bryce, having acquired the use of a luxury vacation house from a client, takes the foursome out for a day of fun in the sun. While snorkeling, Jared discovers an artifact that appears to stem from a shipwreck. Excited by the idea of finding treasure, they decide to investigate and find more relics. The group swims out further and stumbles across the remains of a crashed plane carrying a large quantity of cocaine. Returning to shore, Bryce and Amanda advocate keeping the cocaine to sell for profit, while Jared and Sam oppose it. Later that night over drinks, the group excitedly makes plans to further explore the shipwreck. To avoid attracting attention to the location, Bryce and Amanda agree not to report the crashed plane and its illegal cargo until they have secured their claim on the sunken ship. The next day, Jared and Bryce visit a local boat supplier to secure the equipment needed to retrieve the treasure, with Bryce funding the purchase. Shortly after arriving, Jared finds out that Bryce, during a recent trip to Las Vegas, had borrowed money from a loan shark and is in heavy debt. Too embarrassed to tell Jared the night before, he admits that he is in no position to pay for anything. Not taking the news well, the pair head back to the house, unaware that a man overhears their conversation and relays the information to someone on the phone. The group returns to the sunken ship with Jared's scuba gear and metal detectors. Staking out the perimeter, Jared manages to find additional artifacts from the ship. Amanda sneaks off and makes her way to the plane while the rest of the group continues to search. Looking for the cocaine, her air tank gets caught and she is unable to wrestle it free. Returning to the boat, Jared learns that Amanda isn't with the others and goes back to look for her. He makes his way to the plane and sees her passed out from the lack of oxygen and manages to get her some air. Jared is suspicious when she tells him she went looking for him and denies looking for the drugs. Back on land, the group cleans the artifacts and discovers that the wreck turns out to be the remains of a legendary French pirate ship called the Zephyr. This legendary shipwreck is rumored to contain millions of dollars in gold, and the group head out to a local club to celebrate. A friend of Jared approaches him at the bar and tells him some outsiders have been asking about him, wanting to know who he hangs out with and where he dives. Elsewhere in the club, Bryce spots Amanda, who appears to be getting close with the club owner, Primo. Bryce approaches them and punches Primo after exchanging some words with the big man. Jared, who notices the commotion, rushes over and breaks up the fight. The next day, the group heads back to the wreckage for another dive, while two thugs on another boat watch on. Jared and Bryce notice the boat underwater and sneak back on board and attack them. The men escape without their gear and Jared pays Bates, the owner of Expedition Bonzel and fellow treasure hunter, a visit to warn him off. Later that evening, Bryce suggests they go back to the plane to retrieve some of the cocaine and use the money to purchase the equipment they need. Jared stands firm and refuses to sell the drugs. That night, without Jared's knowledge, Bryce and Amanda swim out to the plane and retrieve some of the packaged narcotics. Looking to unload the stash for money, they pay a visit to Primo at the club. Unfortunately, Primo turns out to be an associate of the drug lord to whom the cocaine belonged in the first place. Calling Jared, Bryce asks him to meet him on a boat in the middle of the sea. Reyes, the drug lord, is on board and wanting his cocaine back, threatens Jared, Amanda and Bryce at gunpoint to bring him his cocaine or die. Faced with this choice, Jared agrees to retrieve the cocaine but will require $30,000 to purchase diving equipment, which he plans to use to salvage the shipwreck. Back on land, the trio breaks the bad news to Sam. Sam is heartbroken that Jared would violate his principles and he is unable to convince her it's a one-time thing. She leaves him, saying that they are over. Jared, Bryce, and Amanda head to sea. They start the night's work by uncovering the site of the Zephyr, finding the ship's bell with the name on it. Returning to the plane, they remove the cocaine packs, along with the ship's bell. As Jared pulls the hull up to the surface, Amanda is attacked by a large tiger shark. They need to get her help and he releases the net back into the water. Arriving at the hospital, the doctors are unable to stop the bleeding and Amanda dies. Hearing of the tragedy, Sam comes to the hospital, and she and Jared are reunited. While driving back from the hospital, the threesome is confronted by Primo at an intersection. A car chase ensues and with the dealer hot on their tail, Jared forces Bryce and Sam to drive away, promising to meet up. He surrenders to Primo and tries to get them to back off. Jared takes them to the shipwreck and offers him and Reyes the loot on the Zephyr. The group heads over to Reyes and upon arriving, they find the boat deserted. Primo instructs Jared to lay low as he goes to investigate. Hearing gunshots, Jared explores the boat and finds the dead bodies of Reyes and Primo. Bates exits from the washroom and asks Jared where his cocaine is. Bolting out of the room, Jared jumps overboard and manages to escape back onto shore. Meanwhile, Sam insists on going to the police and has Bryce drop her off at her friend Roy's, who is a local cop. Sam tells him about the treasure and cocaine, and knowing a guy who can help them, Roy takes her to see him. Jared meets Bryce at the pier and is informed that Sam is with Roy. Bates, who is holding Sam captive, answers her cell phone and tells Jared to disclose the location of the cocaine. Arranging to meet, Jared and Bryce work on a plan to save Sam. Back on the boat, Roy, who thinks Sam has had enough, tries to convince Bates to let her go and is shot for his efforts. Jared arrives and is taken to Sam, who is in the engine room, handcuffed to the body of Roy. The boat heads for the plane's location, and when they arrive they spot an empty cocaine bag floating on the surface. Jared tells Bates that some of the cocaine must have been damaged, and threatening to destroy what's left, he jumps into the water. Bates and his men change into scuba gear and go after him. Entering the plane, looking for Jared, it turns out that Bryce has switched places with the dead pilot and launches a surprise attack on the men. An underwater struggle follows and they manage to kill all of the men, but Bryce is wounded. Meanwhile, Sam finds a forgotten machete in the engine room and uses it to free herself. She then severs a pipe, which brings one of Bates' men down into the engine room, where she locks him in. The man escapes from the engine room and chases her to the bridge, where she uses a radio to call for help. Managing to break in, Sam wounds him with a boat hook and they struggle, both falling into the water. The blood from his wound attracts a nearby tiger shark that attacks him and allows Sam to escape. Back underwater, Jared uses an air tank as a missile by hammering off the valve. Bates escapes it, but as it hits the fuel tank at the back of the plane, it causes the entire plane to explode, killing Bates. Sam jumps into the water, fearing for Jared's life, but he survives. 6 weeks later, the trio is salvaging the Zephyr. They try to bring an old cannon to the surface but fail, and it sinks back down to the bottom, hitting the wood deck to reveal the sought-after gold. The end. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a comment down below. For more movie recaps, don't forget to click the like and subscribe button. See you next time.